November 29th, 2011 meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Gamble? Mr. Gamina? Here. Ms. Cayley? Here. Mr. Tucciarello? Here. Mrs. Valerio?
Here. Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There is. If you'd like to come up the center aisle and speak, you have 2 minutes. Mr. Gregory?
I just want to say a few words about the Parks Department. Having just recently, I think it was last week or the week before, having been to their meeting up there on Highland Boulevard or whatever the name of that street is, I would say in compliments to Larry Staub and the rest of his staff, that is probably one of the very best meetings I've ever attended in terms of participation, information, and very well managed, much like I would anticipate the whole department is. So I just want to make a statement to the legislature, something you probably already know, but I think it's always good to acknowledge what is good in government, because sometimes it doesn't get a whole lot of attention paid to it. I would like to mention 2 additional things, though, if possible. And presently, one of the studies I'm doing in terms of county government is looking at the Parks Department. Not the particular at this era, but before. And Mendon Ponds Park was actually a game preserve at one time, but I found another bit of interesting information about it. That a long time ago, I can't give you the year exact right now, I could give that to you. It was used as a place where we planted pine trees. And we sold the pine trees to the state for reforestation. Well, we know that with the growing population that there's a whole lot of demand for natural resource. We have a lot of open land in our parks. And is it possible, as a source of revenue somewhere in the future, that we might look at some of these lands that we actually have and perhaps set them aside for exactly that, planting trees again for the idea of resale. We're always looking for a revenue source. And revenue source can get support from this county legislature in terms of helping the budget along on that side too. I mean, in other words, you're going to invest money where money can be returned. I should also point out something I raised at that particular meeting was I knew a man who was on East River Road who raised pheasant, and the state is always looking for new game. Bottom line is Warren Mack sold pheasant to the state for a long time, and here again we have a lot of open land. Can we perhaps privatize a part and give a license to somebody to raise pheasant as a source of revenue? Just an idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone that is not signed up that would like to speak? And I welcome all of you that are here that are department and other leaders in our community of our fine arts, etc. And now we have a special present. Oh, we have to do, excuse me, do decorum here. We have to do the approval of the minutes. And the July 27th, 2011 minutes are before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Now we have a special presentation by Kate Bennett, who's the Executive Director of the Rochester Museum and Science Center. Kate?
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here, mostly to thank you for the fine support that Monroe County has given to the Rochester Museum and Science Center in order for us to serve the community. We really appreciate what you do for us. When I was thinking about education and what kinds of things would be important to communicate to you tonight, I decided nothing would be better than to introduce you to Tim Cawley, who is our head of theater and outreach at the museum. And the reason I want you to experience Tim, because Tim is always an experience, is imagine, you all know that we have a problem. We have a problem in education of how do we get kids interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. And in Rochester and in Monroe County, we really need to increase the number of kids who are willing to go on to these subject matters. So we have a special ability in that we have a theater department at the museum that helps people get turned on to science. 50,000 kids came through the museum this past year on school trips. Tim and his staff greeted 7,500 in outreach programs throughout the county and more. So I'd like to give you, he promises 3 minutes. If he goes over, I'll get the hook. But give him a shot.
I'm off like a herd of turtles. Thank you very much. My name is Tim Colley, and I work at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. And as Kate was saying, it's really important for us to get kids interested in science. Between 4th and 8th grade, we lose kids to science because it starts to get boring and a little mundane. And actually, one of the big reasons, let me start what I'm going to do first, is I've got a little ping pong ball, and it's got a teeny tiny little hole in it that I've marked off with arrows, because after you get over 40, the teeny tiny hole is almost impossible to find. And what I've got inside here is a doer, and the doer is just like, a lot of people remember a thermos. We show it to kids, and it takes 10 minutes for them to figure out thermos, because nobody carries thermoses anymore. What we've got is liquid nitrogen inside of there. So we've got a hole in the don't worry, hardly anyone gets hurt during this one.
Yeah, but
Maybe
unfortunately, I'm the closest person to it.
Well, see, the best part about being closest to it is you never really realize until the next day. But as we go along, actually, what's safe as can be, nitrogen, the #1 element in the air. It's 4/5 of our element, and then it comes oxygen, and third is helium, but it's trying harder. And so what we do is we work with the kids, and we get them excited about science, because a lot of times they'll see science and they get so wrapped up in their social media and whatnot that they don't get excited about it, because, let's face it, there's not, the #1 chemist isn't out there pulling down a big endorsement package for lab coats and goggles. And their paparazzi aren't chasing around nanotechnologists taking pictures of them. So the kids kind of lose it a little bit. But one of the things that I saw, this is probably 10 or 11 years ago, and we talk about this. What's this? Oh, that's sorry. All right, so 2 people get hurt during this one.
Well, wait, I'm not hurt yet.
We're not hurt.
So that's
well,
3.
As of yet, but the night is still young. We turn around, we've got
2 minutes.
a plastic milk jug. Oh, I knew someone would be watching. Plastic milk jug. It's a polymer. Poly meaning many, mer meaning one thing. These are cross-linked, these polymers. And the most important polymer in the world, DNA. And what we're going to do with this, we're going to take, what's this right here?
Hair dryer.
Paint
A lot of
stripper.
people think it's a hair dryer.
It's a paint
You can use
stripper.
it as a hair dryer, but you only have to dry your hair once a month.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, it's some kind of cleanup and salve application, because it's actually a heat gun. What we're going to do is we're going to add a little heat to our system here. Now, heat is a form of what? Energy. That's right, energy. So, we've got energy. When energy is moving, it's kinetic. And when heat energy is moving, anyone know it's moving? Youngest member of the Cules family, the little daughter Molly. Molecules, that's right. So we've got molecules moving. They don't get any better either. I'm happy enough because you're the closest one to the doer.
I know.
All right, so right now we're seeing it starting to melt down a little bit. And actually it's gone from an opaque to now a transparent. It was translucent. And now I've got to watch it or else I'm going to screw up more than what I already have. But we're good to go. Got to heat it up.
Smells good.
It does look weird. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So now we've changed it from a plastic milk jug into a plastic bag. And what this does for the kids is it helps them understand about recycling. And big thing about Monroe County recycling happened, I think, somewhere around June. We went from just doing 1s and 2s to doing
7.
everything. Thank goodness I've been throwing everything in the bin for a while anyways. But, sorry, should I mention that? Let's move on. All right, one more thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about liquid nitrogen. And we've got
I thought so.
Now, turn that thing and turn around, and if you let go of the rubber ducky balls underneath the water, it does what? Soaks up the liquid nitrogen. Now, liquid nitrogen, in America, what do we use? What scale do we use for temperature? Fahrenheit, that's right, good old-fashioned Fahrenheit. How about everywhere else in the known world? Celsius. Hey, we're supposed to switch over to the metric system. The nuns told me when I was 9 years old. I went home and I said, Mom, I gotta learn the metric system. And I'm gonna switch over in 10 years. And she said, be quiet, eat your spam. And turn around, and now that was 40,
I'll wait till he's done.
4 years ago. But we haven't switched over yet. Why haven't we?
Because there's still spam.
Because there's still spam. We're in America. We don't have to. That's all right. Here we go. Now let's see. This should.
I am so psyched.
Now, as cool as that seems, the reason why it works is liquid nitrogen sits at, for Kelvin, and that's the scale we use in American science, it's 73 to 76 Kelvin, which is short sleep weather if you're Kelvin. Whether you're Kelvin's cousin Claude and Kelvin in Celsius, it's minus 196 degrees Celsius. And if you're Kelvin's friend Frank in Philadelphia using Fahrenheit, it's minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the same temperature it's liquid is just about the same temperature that it boils. So when it boils, it changes from a liquid to a gas, and then it creates
Mass.
pressure, more area pressure, and this usually works best the second time around and only takes about 10 or 15 seconds, but it may not because it's under a little pressure now. We'll try it one more time. Come on, don't be nervous. And the pressure builds up inside, and it starts to turn around and spin the ping pong ball, and then the ping pong ball spins around, and it's all about science. And our whole idea is to get kids so excited about science that they wonder why it works. They don't have to see facts and figures, they can see it working, and they can watch it happen. And the sad part is for you guys, unless you're there, it's all the same work. We're all doing that work. All you folks sitting here and us at the museum, that's our work. And our work is to get, we're the #1 country in the world. We're 23 in math and 20 in science. We should be embarrassed about that. Because we've got other countries coming to learn, to go back to their countries and take away what we actually have. And the thing that's so cool for us at the museum is we're all in it together, but we get to see, kids will say it's magic, and there isn't any magic, except for when you see the kids get it, and you see them get excited about it, and you see them go, oh, and you hear the parents talk to you a month later and say, you know, my kid is still talking about what they saw. They still talk about this, they still do that, they get excited about science, and you turn around, and it's just the best thing in the whole wide world, because somewhere along the line, maybe some kid is going to figure out how to cure cancer just because they saw a milk jug turn into a plastic bag. And that's what we do best. And my thanks to you for helping us and allowing us to do it. And going over 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'll be back to give you another installment next year. Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. It was quite informative. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a presentation as well. Not quite as exciting. Lo siento mucho. But he's welcome to come up and give it. Mr. Adair. Put a little pizzazz in this one, huh? We have bells, whistles, screens. Okay.
No, not at all. That is a tough act to follow, and based on that, I'm going to take the, $15.5 million we spend in Rec and Ed and give it all to the Museum and Science Center. How about that? Now that's what a budget director can do for you. I can't spin or ping pong balls, but I can do some other things. Thanks, Legislator Gamble. I appreciate that one. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present the Recreation and Education portion of the County Executive's proposed 2012 budget this evening. Take a few minutes to go over some slides here with you on the funding for the Recreation and Education area of the budget, and then we'll ultimately answer any questions if there are any, or maybe do some more ping pong ball tricks. As you can see, the Recreation and Education area covers both the operating and grants budgets of the proposed plan. The overall proposed 2012 county budget is balanced at this time. It maintains our tax rate at $8.99. It complies with the county's Taxpayer Protection Act that this body authorized in 2007, and it also will comply with the New York State's new property tax cap. Overall, recreation and education portion of the budget is contained in each of these areas. It's contained in mandated spending, non-mandated spending, and debt service. Overall, our operating budget is up 0.9% from 2011. Out of that total $939 or $940 million operating budget, $48.8 million or 5.2% is used for recreation and education. This area includes the Parks Department, MCC, authorized agencies such as the Museum and Science Center, and the library. Where does the money come from to support these operations? It comes from a variety of sources. We have property taxes as one of the components to it, state aid, federal aid, a small slice of fund balance which will be used by the library, other revenues and charges for services. Other revenues include things like MCC parking. Also, the Parks Department participates in our grants budget. They have a $260,000 grant that they receive pretty much every year that's used for funding at the zoo and for the zoo vet and the horticulture program that's maintained in our Parks Department. As you can see, that's approximately 0.1% of the total budget. Later on this evening, we'll go through human services, which is the majority of the grants budget. In our budget presentation, we also go over the mandated and non-mandated portions of the budget. And once again, in 2012, the mandated portion of our budget is 82%, and the non-mandated is 18%. Speaking specifically to the areas that the Recreation and Education Committee is responsible for, in the area of parks, you see approximately a $1.5 million reduction in total expenditures from 2011. That includes really two things: a loss of a one-time grant of $750,000 for a project out in Webster Park, and the reduction of debt service, which was a normal payoff of debt of approximately $650,000. You'll also notice a slight decrease in the revenues, and that's because of the grant funding being extinguished after last year. Monroe Community College, as this body did in August, approved their budget and approved an operating contribution from the county of $17.88 million. That is part of this $24.9 million expense. In addition to the expenses included here, you have items such as out-of-county tuition and capital and debt service. Ultimately, debt service decreased slightly this year, again, based on the normal paydown of debt. And with the $1.2 million increase, that net gets you the difference between the two expense numbers in 2011 and 2012. Another area that this committee is responsible for is the Monroe County Library System and the Central Library System. The Monroe County Library System, the county provides $278,000 for debt service as part of its operating budget. This decrease from last year, again, is just simply the pay down of the debt that the county has issued on behalf of the library system for a number of, I'll call them smaller projects at this point in time. In addition to that, and this one is the one that gets probably the most attention from this committee and from others outside, is the support to the central library system that Monroe County provides. And again, we will maintain flat funding to the central library system. It's $6.8 million. It's made up of two components. We did the same thing last year, $6.6 million from the operating budget, and another $200,000 of library fund balance. And just as a point of note, that in 2012, the library's main hours have been reduced from 63 hours to 55 hours. In the cultural area, we have 3 different items here. One of them is supported strictly by hotel motel tax, and that's the cultural district debt. Again, this is down from last year by about $30,000 to $91,000. This is the last payment in this debt service, and that will be extinguished, and that will mean that the garage on East Avenue, which is part of the cultural district, will no longer have a financial burden on the county at this point in time. In addition to that, we have flat funding for the Monroe County and Cornell Cooperative Extension and $50,000 of flat funding for the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District. At this time, that concludes my presentation, and I will take questions as soon as I get back over to the table. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll open up the floor for any questions that you have. Mr. Gamina?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 3 questions through you, Madam Chair, to Director Staub or to Mr. Adair. You had mentioned that there is a loss of grant funding through the Parks budget, $750,000. It was a one-time grant for Webster Park. Director Staub, can you just explain, or Mr. Adair, can you explain what the grant money was used for, or was it used?
Through the chair, I will take a shot at that, and Larry can jump in whenever I misspeak. There was a $750,000 grant that this body accepted in 2011 for a green lodge in Webster Park.
Okay. Yeah.
That money has been expended at this point in time, and thus is not a reoccurring grant, and that's the loss of the expense and the revenue from the Parks Department.
I don't think we got the grant, right, Director Staub?
Through you, Madam Chair, as much as I hate to correct the budget director, I will so at this time. We did apply for that grant, and part of the grant regulations on that specific one was that the legislature had to actually authorize our application for that grant. And at the time money was appropriated, that we would get the grant. We did not get the grant, so the work was never done.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, in terms of staffing through Parks and Rec, or through the Parks Department, is there a decrease in staffing, and will it be, if there is a decrease, is it through layoffs or attrition?
Through the chair, there was one layoff in the Parks Department for the 2012 budget, and I believe the position was an office clerk 2.
And through you, Madam Chair, was that position, is a position currently filled, or is that position vacant at the moment?
Through the chair, that position was filled, and so there was an actual layoff in the department.
And my last question through you, Madam Chair, regarding the Central Library budget. You had mentioned, Mr. Adair, that it's 6.6 mil from operations and 200,000 from the library fund balance. Can you refresh my memory in terms of was fund balance used last year? Number one, and as a follow-up, what is the current fund balance?
Through the chair, it was the same exact dollar amount of fund balance used, and I don't have the number as to how much is remaining at this point in time, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $500,000 if my memory serves me correct, but I will follow up on that one.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Adair, is there a legal limit to the for the library's fund balance? Must they carry a fund balance from year to year, or can that balance be drawn down to zero?
Through the chair, I'm going to go back to the last question because I was passed a note. And we estimate that the fund balance after the use of this $207,000 should be approximately $470,000. And there is no legal requirement regarding balance for fund balance. That is something that you can use in these instances to support operations or for whatever purpose you deem necessary. This is undesignated fund balance at this time.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I have one more. Staffing for Central Library, is the staffing static going from 11 to 12?
Through the chair, I'll have to follow up with you, but I believe that they've reduced the central library staff by approximately 10 positions as part of this budget process.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, any kind of the information regarding what those 10 positions would be appreciated.
Through the chair, we can provide that.
Okay. And, sorry, one more question. Central Library fund balance, is there a plan to replenish any of the $207,000 that will be used for fiscal year 2012?
Through the chair, there is not at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think Ms. Cayley had her finger up first. Saw this little. You're not ready? Okay, Mr.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair, last year we came upon this time and we were talking about the basketball courts at the beach. We haven't heard anything else about that, and I see there's nothing in the budget pertaining to that. So is that a done deal, or we forgot about it? We said we was going to look into if there's going to be some revenue to redo the courts. We was going to find some use for that area down there. We haven't had anything or heard anything since that time.
Through you, Madam Chair, actually we've done extensive work on the former basketball courts down at Ontario Beach Park. They were in pretty rough shape. We've fixed up all of the interior walls, and then this spring we will be resurfacing that area, and it'll become a pickleball court.
Excuse me, I'm not familiar with that sport.
Pickleball is an emerging sport. It's very popular with both high school students and senior citizens. It's played on a modified tennis court. The area there is very conducive in size to accommodate, I think, 5 pickleball courts with nets. And we'll also be loaning pickleball equipment to people who don't have their own, who want to use it. And in our talking with customers who have asked us to program more of this, and also talking with other rec programs throughout the county, it's very popular. I know in the town of Irondequoit, they have clubs throughout the winter months and the summer months. So we anticipate a high usage for those courts for this.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I have one question. The lodging and shelter fees are regularly increased during the budget. golf course fees. Is that one area we're never going to touch, or is that an area that we don't need to touch? Can you give me some enlightenment on that, please?
Through you, Madam Chair, at this point, we feel that the golf course fees are competitive with similar golf courses in the region. The golf industry in Monroe County is a very competitive industry, and we have had flexibility in the last few years where we have authorized an actual reduction in some of the fees, especially out at Churchville, to increase usage out there. It's a very difficult climate for the golf industry, and we feel that these fees at their base level are very competitive. These fees are the highest that we could charge, and we are able to adjust downward. What you approve here are the upper limits of these fees.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gamble. Ms. Cayley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to administration. In the major accomplishments and the major objectives, I just wanted to go over timeline and how things sort of overlap. The major accomplishment cited as the completion of the elephant enclosure, that particular area, I forgot the name of it, begins with a Z, right?
Zoo?
No, not zoo. It's not spam either. The area where the...
Step into Africa?
Yeah, that's good. That's good enough. How will that overlap with the improvements? Well, basically, the improvements, the road improvements, is that part of that particular area?
Through you, Madam Chair, what road improvements are you talking about?
2012 major objectives, roadway improvements at Seneca Park. Do the roadway improvements actually include areas within the zoo proper or just the park?
Through you, Madam Chair, those roadway improvements would be in the lower Seneca Park, so it would not be part of the zoo.
Thank you. And what is the expectation of the completion time of that visit to Africa area that is still blocked off?
Through you, Madam Chair, Step into Africa is slated for substantial completion by the end of this year, as is the elephant exhibit, and we anticipate opening that area once the area is grown in with some of our plantings that we'll be installing in the spring. This spring, we'll open that entire African exhibit up to the public.
Thank you. I would like to say that I was pleased through the chair that there were not any admission increases at the zoo. I feel that we have reached that peak, so it was good that we did not go any higher in that, and I appreciate that. One or two more, I think. Thank you. Through the chair, with the park spending down, debt service down, funding down, how will this affect, I know that we have upcoming accepting a grant for trail maintenance and development. How is, with a smaller amount going towards trail development or trail maintenance, do you feel that we are going to have any, that it's going to have any great impact with the maintenance going forward, since one of the good accomplishments has been the repurposing of the trails in around Bay Park West and Tryon Park with the mixed-use trails, and not really knowing going forward how much that's going to cost to maintain or alter. So I guess I'm speaking towards that. Are we cutting the park short?
Through you, Madam Chair, this budget that is before you does not affect the service delivery at the parks whatsoever. Doesn't affect the maintenance of the parks. What you've seen in the reduction, as the budget director detailed, is basically a reduction in the amount of debt service from debt being retired. But we are funded to continue forth with our operations as we have for the last few years. There'll be no service cuts, no program delivery cuts. Trails will be maintained, parks will be maintained. As far as trail maintenance, we pay very little for trail maintenance because most of it's done by volunteers. The entire stretch that you mentioned over at Ronnequoit Bay Park West that was newly developed trail was by and large through volunteer labor. So we anticipate that that will continue to go forth as well.
Thank you. That's it.
Any
I'm
further
sorry.
questions? I just have a quick question regarding the rentals of the lodges. Which one is a premium lodge versus 5-star? I know that the 750 would be.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's really no increase in the lodge rates. They've been recategorized. So what was just labeled as a $750 a day rental, which is Olmsted Lodge, and specifically mentioned last time, is now called a Signature Lodge. The Premium Lodge, that would be Roebuck and the new lodge in Grease Canal Park, which will open soon. And then all the other ones are the same. The stars have changed because our previous 1-star, we didn't have any lodges in that category. So what was a 2-star lodge is now a 1-star lodge.
And I noticed there was a notation for doubling on holidays. Is that been in the past, or is that something new?
Through you, Madam Chair, that has been in the past since I've been at the Parks Department. I know before I got there it was, and just this past Thursday we had many lodges rented out for Thanksgiving at double the cost.
Very good. Thank you. Any further questions? Ms. Cayley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, that actually just did raise a question. I guess I don't understand then what is excess of normal occupancy. Is normal, through the chair, is normal occupancy set by safety standards? Are safety standards enlisted in these particular lodges? Or is it the amount of square footage that you're allowing per body in the lodge? I know that we have an amount that we can have in this room, and so how does that work, please, through the chair?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's the posted occupancy of the lodges. It's which is different than the fire marshal allowed persons per room, and many times it's for an area that we feel can accommodate it through outside usage. So at Olmsted Lodge, for example, the posted occupancy is 99. We will on occasion allow above that in the summer because there's a large deck that can accommodate 80 people.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? There being none, move on to new business.
Thank you.
Ready?
You too, Scott.
Referral 11-263.
Moved by Mr. Gamina, second by Mr. Tucciarella. Any questions? Any questions? Mrs. Cayley?
Thank you. I don't seem to be able to keep my place today. Through the chair, again, a trail issue. More significantly, that it's a decrease of just under $5,000 from over last year, and not knowing exactly what the process is with these groups and how they are reimbursed, or if they are. Couple questions: are the groups that are the recipients of this grant funding, are they reimbursed for their services, or they are paid the grant funding up front?
Through you, Madam Chair, this grant is basically a pass-through from the state. The monies that are passed through are collected through snowmobile registrations. 99.9% of the trails maintained under this grant are not in Monroe County parks. There's a very small section that was authorized by the county legislature about a decade ago in Churchville Park that's basically a connector for a larger trail that would be covered under this. But most of this is not in county parkland. The snowmobile clubs put together their grant application and detail the maintenance that they've done, and it's a reimbursement of that maintenance.
Thank you. That's it.
Any further questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-264.
Moved by Mr. Tucciarello, second by Mr. Gumina. Any questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-265.
Moved by Mr. Gumina, second by Mr. Tucciarello. Any questions? I just want to say thank you to that family. Anyways, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda.
Referral 11-266.
Moved by Mr. Tucciarello, second by Mr. Gumina. Any questions? Mrs. Cayley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to to Mr. Staub. Could you just walk me through how the county accepts a used snowmobile for use and what it would be used for and what the liabilities are? Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, the County Parks Department has a very good relationship with the Rochester Cross Country Ski Foundation. They operate in several parks throughout the region, some of them state parks, where they actually do some of the trail maintenance. In Mendon Ponds Park, where we have an extensive system of cross-country ski trails that we are grooming, they actually pay us for us to hire a trail groomer during the season. So his entire salary is reimbursed by the Cross Country Ski Foundation. What they have offered here is a snowmobile that they've used in one of the state parks they help maintain, and for the ski groomer to be able to groom the trails better at Mendon Ponds. We currently have a snowmobile there, and we feel that the addition of another one would help us groom them in better shape.
Thank you. One more through the chair. So there is no, this is something that's been done before, and there is no liability, and the vehicle is taken into the snowmobile garage, and I'm not saying, and again, I'm not saying it's a generous gift to a private individual, but I was just wondering what the legal ramifications or liability, because we have another snow groomer using a vehicle that has been a gift from another entity, and I guess what I'm looking for is a little bit more of what happens to the snowmobile when it comes in. Is it in?
Through you, Madam Chair, we've inspected the snowmobile, and it's in very good condition. You know, it'll be used and operated by a county employee, so there's, you know, no liability there from that standpoint, because it's going to be a county employee operating it, not a volunteer. But the snowmobile has been deemed by our mechanics to be in very sound shape, and we're very happily receiving it.
Thank you. Then part of that question was a misunderstanding, because when you first answered, it was hiring of a trail groomer. I did not realize it was a county employee.
Right. We hire a groomer as a county employee, okay, and then they reimburse his salary.
Thank you.
Any further questions? There being none, item on the agenda.
Referral 11-284.
Oh, I forgot to vote.
Oh,
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item on the agenda, please.
referral 11-284.
Any discussion? Or moved by, now I'm flustered. Mr. Gamina, did you move it? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Tucciarello seconded. Thank you. Now, any discussion on this? Mrs. Kaling.
Thank you. Through the chair, just unless I'm missing something, what was the impetus to purchase the property in the first place? Was it trail completion or what?
Through you, Madam Chair, and this is a very exciting referral, and it's a very exciting purchase that we're approving here today. The building in question is the Stevens Counter Post. It's in the town of Rush. It's directly adjacent to the Lehigh Valley Trail. Stevens Counter Post has currently a handful of members, and they are basically planning their own demise at some future date, because they are all basically in their 70s and 80s, and they know that at some point there's not going to be any more post members, so they're looking to find a suitable use for this property. I can thank President Adair for brokering this for us with the Post. It's a very good deal. This is a great building that's currently used as a party-type facility. It has a commercial-grade kitchen, large assembly area, and we plan to use it as a new park lodge and get revenue for this lodge and make it part of the Lehigh Valley Trail system, which is a county park and does not currently have any structures on it. So it's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the Post, and I know that they plan to donate proceeds to veterans causes.
Thank you. You're right. It is pretty exciting. When do you, through the chair, when do you expect that the purchase would be completed? And then secondly, when would you expect that you'd be able to open up the lodge as a functioning park?
Right. Through you, Madam Chair, we anticipate the transfer to occur around the first of the year. And quite frankly, it's going to require very little on our part to make it user-ready. Very few repairs. It's been kept in remarkable shape by the Post and their members. We anticipate to have it up and going no later than this spring.
Thank you. And then one final question. How many stars?
That would be a 5-star lodge.
Thank you.
Sounds fair to me. Okay. At this time, we may have to vote. Okay. I'm ready to rock and roll here. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Okay. At this time, are there any other questions to come up before this committee? All right, there being no further business, the November 29th, 2011 meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee will be announced. Thank you.